Hello and welcome to our channel. Today we have a fascinating issue that has piqued the worldwide community's interest. Prepare to be surprised as we delve into the surprising turn of events surrounding China and how manufacturers return from India where aspirations have been dashed. Prepare to investigate the perplexing causes of this disaster and investigate the probable financial, political, environmental, and technical ramifications. Let's go on this exciting trip together. Embark on an enthralling trip as we uncover the amazing story of how manufacturers return from India where hopes are dashed to China where the economy is rapidly booming. Discover the fascinating considerations that inspire this major choice as we dig into the fascinating world of the makers. It is just about the Indian economy, or are there deeper forces at work? Join us as we examine how manufacturers are leaving India to invest in China, which has a thriving economy. Is there more to the story? Then join us on this trip. Stay tuned to discover the reality behind this. For much of recorded history, up until the early 19th century, the Indian subcontinent's economy was the greatest in the world. In PPP terms, India will account for 7.2% of the world economy in 2022 and roughly 3.4% in nominal terms. Though India is expected to be one of the world's fastest-growing economies in the coming decade, many international corporations have struggled to capitalize on the huge potential of a country with over 1.3 billion people. Yes, it is a large market for enterprises, but several multinational corporations find it a difficult destination for a variety of reasons. Apple is one of the large firms that have either left India or reduced their activities in the recent decade. Manufacturing companies may exit India for a variety of reasons. In India, for example, companies have exited due to arbitrary tax regime, accumulated losses, overcapacity, land acquisition issues, and lack of expected growth due to market anomalies. The withdrawal of foreign portfolio manufacturers was driven by lower investor risk capital and monetary tightening, heightened local competition, shifting global market priorities, new business models, accumulated losses, among other factors are some of the reasons why some manufacturing companies pulled out from India. This also resulted in the movement of some companies from India like Vitafoam and many others. Moving away from COVID-19, some factors were involved in the movement of manufacturing companies from India to China. Using one of the world's greatest manufacturers, a trend of shifting manufacturing lines from China to Vietnam and India has evolved in recent years, fueled by Apple. This trend, however, has suffered a significant setback this year, with Apple's ambitions for manufacture in India appearing to have come to an abrupt halt, and the concept of breaking away from Chinese manufacturing supremacy has become a laughingstock. Westran was the first casualty of Apple's request to shift production lines to India. Under Apple's pressure introduction, Westran became the pioneer of shifting production lines to India in 2020. Western sold its mainland China plants that were manufactured for Apple to Precision Precise, thereby discontinuing its production for Apple and China business. Westran then established factories in India with all their might in the hopes of starting a new business there, although the desire was lovely, but the reality was terrible. After more than 2 years, the Westran plant in India had only developed 10,000 people, which was certainly far slower and on a lesser scale than its factory in mainland China, which had 80,000 employees. Nonetheless, even this modest business was not immune to the hunger of Indian corporations, and Tata eventually purchased a Western facility in India. Outraged by this Westran, the company elected to exit from the Indian market and lose its qualification to produce apples. Westran was the first victim of Apple's efforts to shift away from Chinese production. Foxconn, another business that followed Apple's request to establish plants in India, has also encountered difficulties. Foxconn has just 17,000 workers after more than 3 years of development in India, highlighting the efficiency of Chinese manufacturing in comparison to its factory, which reached 300,000 employees in just 2 years. Following a setback of Westran, Foxconn lowered the development scope of its Indian manufacturing from 70,000 to 50,000 personnel. Not only has Foxconn slowed its own development, but Tianqing, the younger brother of Foxconn founder Terrigo, also experienced a setback in March of this year when his power facility in India put up to supply Apple caught fire. The Tianqing facility in India had 10 production lines, 4 of which were destroyed in a fire in March. In comparison to the Western experience, the fire at the Indian facility appears to be much more serious. Apple has been pushing for manufacture in India for many years, but the number of iPhones made in India is still only around 10%. With such a low proportion, Apple's intentions for manufacturing in India have run into difficulties, causing the corporation to suffer a setback. Apple has not admitted to slowing down, although it has production units in India. It recently announced plans to sell some of the iPhone 15 models manufactured by Luck, sharing position to a mainline Chinese business. Apple's action has had a huge influence on Foxconn, who's adamant about implementing Apple's India production strategy. Following the transfer of a portion of Apple's iPhone 15 orders to Lecture Precision, Foxconn announced the establishment of a new company headquarters in Zhengzhou, signaling that both Apple and Foxconn are growing their investment in Chinese production. Another setback for Apple's manufacturing unit in India is anticipated to stall the development of the Indian industrial chain by the end of 2020. Apple persuaded 14 Chinese industrial chain companies to establish plants in India. However, the recent setback of Western firms, as well as the impact of Chinese mobile phone companies having substantial quantities of money confiscated in India this year, are likely to cause these industrial chain companies to abandon their intentions to establish factories in India. It is possible that Apple's laborious attempts to encourage Indian manufacturing will now fail, and India's stated India manufacturing factory would suffer another setback. For years, India has claimed improvement in manufacturing, but figures from 2022 reveal that India's trade imbalance has reached a new level. With Apple, Foxconn, and others closing production sites in India, manufacturing is likely to stagnate. The fact demonstrates that China's capacity to become the world's largest manufacturing country is not by chance, but is the result of China's unique advantages, long-standing open policies that have drawn successes from global firms, and the Chinese people's hard labor. There are no more hardworking people in the world like those in China, and it's nearly impossible for Apple and Foxconn to recreate the Chinese market's success. In other locations, recent news implies that an agreement was reached when Apple and its contract manufacturer Foxconn increased their investment in Chinese manufacturing. This company is discreetly altering its marketing approach. Adidas is gradually repairing its image in the Chinese market in the hopes of regaining customer trust. In just a few years, the attitude of European and American corporations has shifted even again, which is extremely thought-provoking. Adidas secretly lowered its investment in China and transferred its production operations to Vietnam a few years ago for several reasons. However, in 2022, Adidas' revenue climbed by only 1%, owing mostly to a 36% fall in revenue in the Chinese market. In anticipation of 2022 revenue, which has dropped by 50% in the Chinese area, Adidas officials have acknowledged their faults in the Chinese market and are now attempting to recapture the favor of Chinese customers by secretly releasing advertising. In contrast to the above-mentioned corporations that are secretly returning to the Chinese market, the CEO of the American chip company NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, recently indicated openly that the Chinese market is irreplaceable and that there is hope. That the U.S. considers the interests of American chip businesses in the Chinese market and carefully reconsiders its chip strategy toward China. This demonstrates that American semiconductor makers can no longer afford to lose money in China. In addition, among American chip firms, this is the most active in the Chinese market. 3 years ago, NVIDIA, it modified the 800 chip for the Chinese market, and more recently, it customized the high-end 800 chip for the Chinese market, suggesting an aggressive, proactive approach in fighting for the Chinese market. Apple's quest for production in India is intended to capitalize on India's cheaper labor costs. Wages at Apple's contract factories are just around one-fourth of those of Chinese employees. Apple formerly strongly encouraged Foxconn and Western to develop plants in India, believing that India's manufacturing industry will soon catch up with China. However, Foxconn and Western discovered that the productivity of Indian labor was significantly lower than that of Chinese ones. Indian laborers are hesitant to work extra and have little technical skills. This has resulted in Foxconn having just 17,000 workers in India after 4 years of expansion, compared to 30 people recruited in China in just 2 years. India also lacks an industrial chain. When Foxconn assembles iPhones in India, it must remotely transmit phone parts from the mainland of China, which not only raises prices but also affects manufacturing efficiency. Apple encouraged 14 Chinese industrial chain businesses to open plants in India at the end of last year. Something shocking occurred. However, with Westran corporations withdrawing totally from the Indian market and Chinese mobile phone companies being investigated for tax evasion in India, it is believed that these industrial chain companies' intentions to build up facilities in India may fail. Apple has now given part of its iPhone 15 Ultra orders to Lecture Precision in mainland China, while Foxconn has created a new corporate headquarters in Jinko. Adidas is returning to the Chinese market, and a Jensen in the ad expects that the US will value the Chinese market. All of this indicates that they are refocusing on the Chinese market and production. In less than 3 years, these foreign-funded businesses have gone from attempting to eliminate Chinese manufacturing in the Chinese market to resuming operations. This is welcome news for China. They have discovered that replicating their success in the Chinese market outside of China is difficult. These foreign-funded firms have finally grasped that the Chinese market and Chinese production are indispensable. Wow, I say again, China's market and manufacturing companies are irreplaceable. The reality is that only teamwork can produce the desired results. Today, the global economy has already become a whole with one prosperity and one fall, making it nearly difficult for foreign-funded firms to repeat their successes in the Chinese market outside of China. Apple, Adidas, and Foxconn have provided a good example for them. What are your thoughts on the role of Chinese manufacturing in the world? Thank you for joining us on this fascinating trip as we see manufacturing enterprises relocate from India to China. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more fascinating insights into the world of mega China projects.